You didn't launch a missile. You didn't vote on a military operation. You didn't block a shipping lane. So why are you the one paying for it? Why does a war thousands of miles away suddenly show up in your gas tank, your grocery bill, your rent, and your monthly budget? Because this is the part nobody explains clearly enough. When the United States and Iran move closer to war, the first Americans to feel it are not politicians in Washington. They're drivers, parents, truckers, workers, small business owners, people standing exactly where you and I stand, at the pump, watching the number climb. And here's what makes it worse. Even when the headlines say ceasefire, your prices don't just magically come back down. Because wars don't only destroy cities, they distort markets, they scare shippers, they raise insurance, they choke supply, and then quietly they reach into your pocket. Tonight, I'm going to show you the invisible chain reaction, how tension with Iran can hit US citizens directly, why gas prices jump so fast, why groceries follow, why debt gets heavier, and why the real battlefield for millions of Americans is their bank account. This is not just foreign policy. This is personal finance under fire. To understand why gas prices spike, you need to understand one place most Americans never think about: the Strait of Hormuz. It's a narrow waterway near Iran, and yet it carries an enormous share of the world's oil. That means when this area is threatened by war, by missiles, by mines, by shipping attacks, by military escalation, the oil market doesn't wait for a total shutdown. It reacts instantly to danger. And that reaction becomes your problem. In 2024, around 20 million barrels per day moved through the Strait of Hormuz, roughly 20% of global petroleum liquids consumption. That's why even the threat of disruption there can shake global energy prices. US EIA. Now, here's the key thing most people miss. Oil prices are not based only on what is happening. They're based on what traders think could happen next. If tankers might be delayed, prices rise. If shipping insurance jumps, prices rise. If military threats make the route feel unsafe, prices rise. If markets believe supply could tighten tomorrow, you start paying more today. That's how fear becomes a price tag. And no, America does not escape this just because it produces a lot of oil. Oil is priced in a global market. So if one of the most important energy choke points in the world is under pressure, US gas stations feel it too. The explosion may happen over there, but the invoice gets mailed over here. And if this only affected your commute, that would already be bad enough, but it doesn't stop at your gas tank. That's where the real damage begins. Let's talk about the speed of the pain. Why does gas shoot up so quickly the moment conflict breaks out? Because the price you pay at the pump sits on top of a chain reaction. First, crude oil prices move, then refiners adjust, then wholesalers adjust, then gas stations pass those higher costs on to you. And when markets panic, that chain can move fast. Even after ceasefire headlines or peace talk rumors, prices can stay elevated if shipping remains constrained, or if traders believe the risk isn't over. That's exactly why energy markets often stay tense even after the first wave of political optimism. Reuters. And here's the part every driver already knows from experience. Prices rise like a rocket, they fall like a feather. When the market is afraid, the increase hits almost immediately. But when conditions improve, consumers are told to wait. Wait for the supply chain. Wait for the stations to cycle inventory. Wait for the market to normalize. So families get hit fast and relieved slowly. That delay matters. Because for a lot of Americans, an extra $10, $20, or $30 a week on gas is not some tiny inconvenience. It's lunch money. It's medication money. It's school money. It's the difference between staying ahead and falling behind. And that's why global conflict feels so local so quickly. Not because people are obsessed with geopolitics, but because they can feel it in real time every time they fill up. But the pump is just the beginning. If gas prices rise, the next domino is even bigger, and it hits almost everything you buy. This is where the story stops being about driving and starts being about survival. Because modern America runs on transportation, and transportation runs on fuel. When oil prices rise, diesel gets hit too, and diesel is what powers the trucks that move the country. Food, trucked. Medicine? Trucked. Retail inventory? Trucked. Building materials? Trucked. Packages on your doorstep? Trucked. So when diesel gets more expensive, the cost doesn't stay with trucking companies. It gets passed down the chain. Higher transportation costs have been shown to contribute to food price increases, especially because trucking makes up such a large share of agricultural transportation costs, USDA AMS. That means a war-driven energy shock doesn't just make it more expensive to drive to the grocery store. It can make the groceries themselves more expensive when you get there. That's the double hit. You pay more to go buy the food, then you pay more for the food once you arrive. And suddenly the conversation changes. This is no longer just oil traders reacting to the Middle East. Now it's a mother buying milk, a father trying to fill a work truck, a restaurant owner paying more for deliveries, a small business getting squeezed from every side. This is how foreign conflict becomes domestic inflation pressure. This is how a map turns into a receipt. And this is why so many Americans feel like they're being lied to when they hear the economy is strong, but their real-life costs keep climbing. Because people don't live inside economic press releases. They live inside bills. They live inside checkout lines. They live inside minimum payments. They live inside fuel warnings on the dashboard. And when fuel goes up, almost everything around them gets a little meaner. Now, if that were the end of it, this would already be painful. But there's another layer, one that hits more slowly, more quietly, and sometimes more brutally. Here's a deeper problem. Energy shocks don't just raise prices directly. They can also make inflation harder to control. And when inflation stays hot, or even looks like it could reaccelerate, families get hit again through borrowing costs. The Federal Reserve's job is to push inflation back toward a stable level, and when inflation is too high, interest rates are often kept higher to slow the economy down. Federal Reserve, so what does that mean in plain English? It means your gas bill can hurt you now, and your financing costs can hurt you later. Car loans stay expensive, credit cards stay painful, mortgages stay heavy, small business borrowing stays harder, and families already stretched by daily prices start paying more just to carry normal life. That's why I call it the draft of your dollars. Maybe you're never asked to wear a uniform, but your money gets deployed anyway. Your paycheck gets drafted into higher fuel costs. Your savings get drafted into higher grocery costs. Your future gets drafted into higher borrowing costs. That is how modern war reaches citizens who never touch a battlefield. Not always through direct mobilization, sometimes through affordability, sometimes through exhaustion, sometimes through the feeling that no matter how hard you work, the system keeps moving the finish line. And this is the part that cable news usually misses completely. Most coverage focuses on strategy, who struck first, who controls escalation, what the military response means, what the diplomatic statement signals. But for ordinary Americans, the more urgent question is much simpler. Can I still afford my life if this keeps going? That's the real question. That's the citizen's question. That's the family question. And if the answer starts becoming barely, then this is no longer just an overseas conflict. It's a domestic pressure campaign on every household budget in America. Because war abroad can become insecurity at home. Not because every American is in uniform, but because every American lives in an economy built on energy, transport, debt, and price sensitivity. That is the invisible blockade. Not just ships in a narrow strait, but pressure on households, pressure on prices, pressure on the future. So what do you do? First, don't panic. Panic makes people make stupid financial decisions. Second, understand the pattern. When conflict threatens energy flows, rising prices are not random. They follow a chain. Third, protect your household before you try to predict the world. Watch your fuel exposure. Tighten the weak spots in your budget. Cut waste where you can. Build cash if possible. Be careful with bad debt. And if you invest, pay attention to how energy shocks can shift markets. Because waiting for Washington to rescue your budget is not a plan. Awareness is a plan. Preparation is a plan. Positioning is a plan. And here's the truth nobody can afford to ignore. When oil gets hit, everything gets hit. Transportation gets hit, food gets hit, debt gets hit, and eventually your entire standard of living gets hit.
So no, this is not just about Iran. This is not just about military strategy. This is not just about headlines from the Middle East. This is about the American citizen, the commuter, the parent, the worker, the trucker, the renter, the homeowner, the small business owner, the people who didn't choose the conflict but always seem to pay for it. They call it foreign policy. You feel it as gasoline, groceries, and debt. The war may be overseas, but the bill comes to your house.